I'm really excited to be here today because, as Diana said, TED is a really, really exciting opportunity. It's a great day of inspiration, amazing opportunity to listen to some really different people and do some different things. But I've been asked to talk to you today a little bit about thinking, a little bit about me, and a little bit about being inspired. So I thought I'd start from the top. I'm actually from Edmonton, Alberta, Canada, which is a northern city in absolute nowhere in northern Canada. I was raised in a rather wealthy town, but not in a very wealthy family. Now, don't get me wrong, we did okay, but we moved about 16 times in 14 years. Generally, not by choice, generally by the bank's choice. So we had a lot of movement, went to a lot of different schools, and we weren't very, we were in a very lower socioeconomic household. You may disagree, but we didn't get the luxury of uniforms. So this was my fantastic fashionista moments at teenage years. And we were judged entirely in this wealthy school about how we dressed, what we looked like, what our hair looked like, what type of music we listened to. And it was quite bad. In the background, as you can see, I wasn't very fashionable, but in the background, my parents were going through their own struggles, so I was left a little bit to the wayside. I was heavily bullied at school, so much so that I was actually put in hospital twice. And I couldn't quite figure out how to fit in. So I joined the only crew that I really knew didn't care, and that was the druggies. So I drank a lot, I smoked a lot, I did a lot of drugs, and my school life and my school work really showed. At the age of 14, I considered suicide. I'd had enough. I couldn't see the light at the end of the tunnel. What was the point? There was no opportunity left for me. I was quite angry, I was quite bitter, and luckily, I took it all out on rugby. And I played rugby for about 12 years. Luckily enough, I was actually quite successful, and I ended up playing for the province in Canada as well as the state here in Australia. And I was smart enough not to take my own life, but it did really start the conversation in my head about choices and the different choices that we all make. I realized I wasn't an academic person, and I stupidly dropped out of high school. With drugs, drinking, bullying, everything else that was combined, it was clearly a place I didn't want to be. I didn't want to go to school every day and get my ass kicked, so I'd had enough. So I dropped out of high school and I started working. I ended up answering phones, I worked in car dealerships, I did telesales, and at 19 years old, after a series of a number of events, 2 of my friends were killed, one of them by a drug-induced incident, one of them by an alcohol-related car accident, a number of family crises, and a whole plethora of events I won't go through today. I wanted to escape. Now, luckily, I have dual citizenship, originally from Canada, and my parents are from Australia. So I got on a plane and boarded a plane with $300 in my pocket and landed in Australia. But when I talked to the travel agent, I said, send me to the city that's closest to the beach, and she sent me to Brisbane. So that was clearly my first lesson in understanding that not all people are experts. Now, I spent the next 2 years living in hostels, caravans, and different pubs around the country. I ran whale watching tours in Hervey Bay. I lived in Cape York running a pub, and I sang in bars in Coober Pedy. I eventually ended up in Sydney, working as a receptionist for a recruitment company, and this is where it started to get a little bit more exciting. You see, I'd never lived in a big city. It scared the living crap out of me, to be honest. But it did open my eyes. It made me realize that my world was nowhere near as small as I thought it was. And it made me realize that, you know, all those things and all that history wasn't following me like a bad fart. It actually was my opportunity to get out and experience different lives. So I went from that company to another couple of companies. I ended up starting working with a guy for a company called Unimail. I was 23 years old, and 3 months after I started, he was the only other general manager. He resigned. So I ended up running a business. Now, 11 years later, we've got 5 publications. We've got a couple of websites. I went through a 5-year lawsuit. I've hired over 50 staff. We have 2 different countries that we operate in, and I've distributed over 200 ton worth of marketing material for employers looking for university students. We now have an international successful business. We've recently been awarded the Telstra Small Business of the Year. We've been on the BRW Fast 100 list, and I myself have been awarded the New South Wales Young Businesswoman of the Year last year. But again, the journey's not quite over. In fact, it's only just beginning, and this is the exciting part. So it made me think, what brought me here today? I really feel like if I would have known a few other things before I got to this part of my journey, it could have been a whole hell of a lot smoother. And as I get older, I'm starting to figure out what you guys probably already know, but all the crazy bits, all the ugly bits, all the bits that people beat me for, abused me for, ridiculed me for, yelled at me for, threw me in the gutter for, are the parts that make me really successful. Those are the things that make me tick. Those are the things that make me who I am today. So I thought I'd share with you about 7 things that I feel have really helped me out on my journey. And I'd start out with number 1, social status. We're not restricted by what we dress like, what our family's like, where we're from, what our name is, what our clothes are like, and what our hairstyles is like. It's entirely up to you. In fact, I started to do a bit of research. The top 10 billionaires on the Forbes billionaire list were uneducated or poverty-stricken. I'll give you a couple of good examples. Steve Jobs. You're going to be surprised by this one. He was actually an orphan. He was adopted into a working-class family. Steve Jobs went on to create the iPod, and Apple entirely, and Pixar. Amazing. He couldn't even go through college. J.K. Rowling is another one. J.K. Rowling, actually, obviously, created the Harry Potter series, but she did this completely homeless, living on welfare. And one of my other favorites is Stephen Hawking. Does anybody here know who Stephen Hawking is? Raise your hand if you do. Give me a hands up. Great. Stephen Hawking is one of the world's greatest scientists. Do you know that Stephen Hawking wasn't even good at science? He was great at math. So Stephen Hawking actually started out looking at math, but ended up with science. He's now one of the most renowned scientists speaking all around the world, has taught at Oxford for many years. And the thing about Stephen Hawking is that he actually was diagnosed with motor neuron disease at the age of 20, is completely paralyzed and cannot even speak. They've removed his vocal cords. So amazing people. What I love about these people is they didn't just do amazing things, they changed the world. Steve Jobs changed the way that we use technology. J.K. Rowling changed the way that we read books. And Stephen Hawking changed the way we entirely looked at science. So inspirational, amazing people that started with nothing. And I guess I wish I would have looked at myself less as a victim and realized that it wasn't restricted when I was a teenager and I had that opportunity. So number 2 for me is belief and understanding in what your actual capabilities are. Having belief about who and what you influence on a day-to-day basis. You know, not all of us have to stand on top of the tables and be leaders. Not all of us have to be librarians. Not all of us have to be musicians. Not a lot of us have those capabilities. But from being able to speak in front of groups to being able to assess mathematician strategy, which is clearly not my forte, is an opportunity to see where the strengths for every person has. Now, I see problems everywhere. Everywhere I see the problems. But the great thing about what I do is that I actually see the solutions on how to fix them. And that's what makes me a really successful entrepreneur. However, I'm a little bit terrible at understanding other people's points of view. In fact, I'm a lot terrible at that. And I am particularly crap at doing any accounting or numbers work, like beyond terrible. So what I have is great people in my life that help me learn those capabilities, and I get to learn from them and share those experiences. So it's really understanding what your belief and your capabilities are so that you can share with each other and learn from each other. It's that great opportunity to know. Another one of my favorites is high expectations. How many people here have someone say to them, your expectations are too high? Is that a bad thing? I truly believe that if you have really high expectations of the people around you, the people that educate you, your teachers, your parents, your friends, that's awesome. But make sure you have high expectations of yourself first. If you associate yourself with great people and have high expectations of what they give you, you in turn will receive great things for yourself. I feel like if I would have really understood that high expectations were quite important to me as a teenager, I probably could have saved a few brain cells with all the drugs that I was doing at that time with all the druggies. One of my other favorites, and I like this one because it helps me realize that my high school dropping out was not a complete waste of time. Learning is absolutely constant. It's an absolute lifelong lesson, and it's not just about being academic. It's learning from everything you do and everyone you know. They say that you actually get more from your play than you do your lesson, and that you get more from the people you know and the things you do than you'll ever imagine. When I finally moved to Australia, I finally realized that my world wasn't so small and that people weren't judging me or making comments on every single thing I did, that I started to try new things. So I did some crazy stuff. I learned how to sail. I abseiled down a 250-foot cliff face first. I do a lot of off-roading. I camped, and I've camped all over the world in all kinds of different places. I've fished in some pretty obscure places. I love scuba diving. I've even rode surf boats for the state, and I've won a couple of medals as well. And one of my favorites was, by saying yes and trying everything new, I became a fire breather for the opening ceremonies for the Olympics. I'd never fire breathed before in my entire life, but it was just something that someone had asked me through someone I had met, through something I had done. Said, do you want to try this? Yeah, sure, sounds great, why not? So it's saying yes to all those things and inspiring your day-to-day life. It's changing the way that you think and saying yes to opportunity as it arises. One of my other favorites, and I love this term because it really embraces what it means, is reckless curiosity. I was at my friend's, she's a 5-year-old, and it was her 5-year-old's birthday the other day, and you know, we're getting everything ready for the barbecue, and she says, Mom, why are we cooking chicken? She says, oh, because people like it. She said, but why? Well, you know, it tastes good, but why? Well, of course it gets really annoying pretty quick, but it started to make me realize, why is it a bad thing? When did we stop asking why? Why is what cures cancer? Why is what abolishes poverty? Why is what changes the world and makes people really think about what they're doing? If you start asking why, you understand the purpose for what you're achieving every single day. And of course, that leads through to opportunity. Opportunity, as I believe it, is everywhere. It's entirely up to you as to how you take advantage of it. In fact, it's about horse poo. You see, there is this amazing farmer who some time ago, he saw this race course, and the race course said, right, we need someone to come and remove the horse poo. I'll pay you to remove the horse poo. The farmer said, excellent, I'll come and grab the horse poo. So the farmer comes through, they pay him, he takes the horse poo away, he goes to fertilize his mushrooms. The mushrooms grow so well that he ends up selling his mushrooms. Now the mushrooms and the soil and the horse poo and everything gets toiled through, it becomes this amazing fertilizer, of which he sells back through to the race course to fertilize their roses. He saw an opportunity, he embraced it, he took advantage of it. And it's all about having that opportunity to take that opportunity into your life. It's up to you how you want to choose to take your life. You can whinge about politics, or you can stand up and lobby for it. You can throw something in the bin, or you can recycle it. You can be poor, or you can be profitable. It's entirely how you take that opportunity and create it into your advantage. I've joked regularly about my life, about how if I would have committed suicide, what would have happened? If I wouldn't have left to Australia, what would have happened? If I would have given up and been beaten and regularly trodden on and believed that that was my life path, what would have happened? And it's quite funny, but what I've realized is that it's all about keeping an open mind. I've kept an open mind. I actually wanted to be a marine biologist. That was what I wanted to be. I wanted to go to university and become a marine biologist. And the only thing that stopped me was that it was 7 years of education. And the thought of sitting in another classroom for me was not really high on my priority list, unfortunately, at the time. But I kept an open mind, and I realized that the best thing for me was being humble, understanding my opportunity, and in turn, I'm now an international entrepreneur. I've made a lot of mistakes. I've made a whole world of mistakes, but they've been my best friends. They have taught me all the lessons I need to know as I go through life and how I go forward and with it. I've taken the choices and my opportunities and the benefits that it's presented me, and I've brought forward to my life today. You're about to embark on a day today at TEDx, and if you don't know what TED's about, it is really, really awesome. It's about sharing inspiration. And at my company, Unimail, our values are to be unique, to innovate, create, engage, and communicate. And I really encourage you guys to do that today, to share with each other, to inspire each other, to innovate your thought processes, and think a little bit outside the box. Thanks so much for having me here today, and I hope you have a great day at TEDx.